Welcome to the May 8th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. If you can please join me, stand and do the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shannon, we have roll call.
Messina?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel?
Here.
Rumpler?
Here.
Ward?
Okay. We have two sets of minutes to approve, the March 6th and April 10th.
Motion to approve the March 6th minutes.
I have a motion to approve the March 6th. Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We have the April 10th minutes to approve.
I move to approve the April 10th minutes.
I have a motion to approve the April 10th minutes. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any item that is not on the agenda tonight, this is the time to do so. If not, we'll move ahead. Okay. Staff comments.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me okay? Seems like, okay, perfect. The audio seems a little quiet over here. So just a few things to update you on. So our June meeting is looking a little busy so far. We have between 5 and 7 items that'll be coming before the commission. If it ends up being too many, we may have to look at adding that second meeting in June. But as it is right now, 3 of them are special use permits, and hopefully those will be more straightforward, and then a few other requests will be coming before you. We had successful meetings last month for both East Sherman for the master planning effort and for the Atlas Waterfront project. And so I wanted to thank all the community members that came out and participated, and to commissioners and other city officials for being part of that process. We're doing updates on the project websites for those. So for Atlas, you can get information on the Atlas project on the city's website, so cdaid.org. The bottom of the homepage, there's a button for Atlas Waterfront. And there's also a button on that same homepage for East Sherman, which will take you to a website for East Sherman, which is eastsherman.org. We'll also have an opportunity in the next couple weeks probably for some more community input on some of the design ideas that came out of the design open house, a design studio open house for East Sherman. So we'll let the community members know about that so that we can have everybody weigh in and make sure we're going in the right direction. And we will also be sending out some information that we're looking for volunteers to help with the Parking It on Sherman event, which is always the 3rd Friday in September, and looking for sponsors for banners to go on the street poles along Sherman Avenue. So we have that going on. That's it. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Any commission comments at this time? Anybody wish to say anything that isn't on the agenda? Okay. We had a administrative item, Riverwalk Townhouses LLC, and that's been canceled for this evening. So we're going to go right into public hearings. And the first one is a zone change from R17 to C17, ZC-1-18. And do any of the commissioners have a conflict on this? None? Okay, Sean.
So tonight,
Sean, I'm sorry. If anyone wants to sign up, there's probably a sign-up sheet. And if you haven't signed up, you want to speak on this item, please do so. Okay, sorry, Sean.
okay, so tonight before the Planning Commission is a request for a zone change. It's Z118. The request is for 6 lots on the west side of 5th Street between East Walnut Avenue and East Spokane Avenue. It is a half of a city block. The request is from R17 to C17, and it's 0.964 of an acre. Moving on. So legal notice was published in the press on April 21st, and occupants and owners were notified within 300 feet of the subject property per the legal requirement. Here is the map of the subject property. Right here, yellow denotes the area for the zone change request. The streets are 4th Street, which is a one-way direction north, Walnut, 5th Street, and Spokane Avenue surround the property. Just a second here. A little bit of background information. The R17 and C17 zone change request is located east of the existing Pilgrims Market on 5th Street. The request is for the east half of the block. The southern portion of this area has been used as commercial parking for a number of years to support the business. Mr. Hamilton has acquired additional parcels over time to gain ownership of the 1/2 block request. If Planning Commission remembers, back in 2015, a special use permit for community assembly and education was approved, and that the additional information for that is in your staff report. It can be found on page 2 if you're interested. These are the required findings that need to be made for a zone change, and I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but I can tell the people at home that Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, and City Council makes the ultimate call on the zone change. So the first finding that needs to be made is finding B8, is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So the subject property does fall within the city limits of Coeur d'Alene. The comprehensive plan splits this area, so it looks like it was right on the line, so staff erred on the side of providing both areas so that we can discuss them if you would like to. The first one is Appleway North 4th Street. You can see right down here, this white polygon kind of rides the line of the edge of the Appleway North 4th Street boundary. City limits is in red, and as you can see, the purple and the green are kind of superfluous. They don't tend to follow any specific block, so that's why I said it falls both within the stable established and the transition area. Here is the second comprehensive plan land use area. It's the Northeast Prairie. You can see right down here, this is the request, the subject property, and as it straddles with the one that I was just talking about. City limits is denoted in red. These are the comprehensive plan objectives that apply to the project or the request. Objective 1.12, community design. 1.14, efficiency. 2.01, which is business image and diversity, as well as 305, which is neighborhoods. 401 is city services, and then public participation. Just a second here. So I didn't include this because I didn't want to conflate the two together, but I wanted to mention it. Appleway North 4th Street today, as described in the comprehensive plan, the first sentence in that for today is, this area is a diverse mix of residential, medical, commercial, and warehousing land uses. Appleway North 4th Street tomorrow is generally, this area is expected to be a mixed-use area. The stable established residential area will remain. The Appleway North 4th in the comprehensive plan, this is one of the only areas where it splits the difference between residential and commercial in what the characteristics of those areas will be. I will read the commercial as that is aligned with the request, is that commercial buildings will remain lower in scale than in the downtown core. Streetscape should be dominated by pedestrian facilities, landscaping, and buildings, and shared use parking behind buildings is preferred. That information can be found on page 5 of your staff report. For the Northeast Prairie tomorrow, really what applies the most in this case is the characteristics of Northeast Prairie neighborhoods will be commercial uses are concentrated in existing commercial areas along arterials with neighborhood service nodes where appropriate, and pedestrian connections and street trees are encouraged in both existing neighborhoods and developing areas. So the next finding that needs to be made is finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request of this at this time. So the subject property is pretty much flat. C17 commercial is both to the north and to the south along 4th Street. Along 5th Street, the property to the north is zoned R12 and has single-family homes there. And to the south, the entirety of the city block is zoned C17 and operates as Goodwill. So there's no topographical or other physical constraints that would make the subject property not suitable for the request. And then once again, it mentions here the special use permit that was approved in 2015. So here are some site photos, because photos are 1,000 words. Southeast corner of the subject property, which is looking northwest. This is at the intersection of Spokane and 5th Street. As mentioned earlier, this area here supports the Pilgrim's Food Market up here for their commercial parking to the rear. The next one is basically moving a little bit farther north to show the entirety of the parking lot. Right here is a loading area. This is moving north, looking directly west here is a single-family house that's mentioned in the staff report, as well as the greenhouse that is under construction right now. I don't think it's fully operational. If you have any questions about that, the applicant can answer those. And as well as some public art that was provided by the applicant. And moving a little farther north, and this is showing Walnut right here, which runs east-west. There was a single-family house there. My understanding is I think it burnt and was removed, or was removed. The applicant can speak to that if he would like to. And finding B11 is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regards to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land use. So Chris Bosley, a city engineer, this is his comment on traffic, says that it would not adversely affect the surrounding area, and 5th Street has the available capacity to accommodate additional traffic. Here is a photo for a neighborhood character. This is directly across the street, east of the request of the single-family homes along 5th Street. And so this land use map shows where the commercial businesses are that are operating commercial, as well as the single-family homes. The kind of brown color is duplex, and you can see that that 4th Street is a commercial corridor. As far as the zoning goes, the zoning is largely commercial. You can see the area between 4th and 3rd Street. Entire city blocks are zoned commercial. To the south, as mentioned, Goodwill, the entire city block is commercial. The subject property here is R17 and C17 in the front that is along 4th Street. And then to the north is commercial here with the single families that were mentioned. Staff would like to point out that 5th Street tends to be the demarcation line for where commercial definitely changes to residential only. So everything east of 5th Street is R12. All right, so this portion is speaking to the C17 zoning district and what it will allow. There's a few of the principal uses here rather than an exhaustive list that can be found in your staff report. It's important that staff notes that it may not stay this use for eternity, and the zoning will allow any one of these uses by right. So this is the decision point. So Mr. Hamilton is requesting a zone change of property in city limits. It's adjacent to and partially including his existing business, Pilgrim's Market. The request is from R17 to C17. Planning Commission must provide a recommendation to City Council regarding the proposed zone change, and it measures 0.964 acres or half a city block. And with that, Planning Commission will need to make their findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. Did you have any questions of staff?
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me, Sean, good report. If you, on this slide right here, a question for you. On the zoning map, it shows where the R17 is. Part of the existing Pilgrim's Market to the south, on the south end, extends into that R17 area.
It does.
And there's also parking that's occurring there related to the operation. What's going on there? I mean, I assume that's either been given the benefit of a special use permit or it's grandfathered, or how does that happen in our R17 zone?
That's a great question, and I looked into the special use permit side of things, and that they never did get a special use permit for commercial parking in a residential area. As far as I can tell, it was either annexed that way or grandfathered in that way. So it is legally non-conforming. It has existed for a very long time. So the city would never go and say you have to get out of the R17.
And it's been that way a long time. So for all intents and purposes, it's conforming by virtue of grandfathering or whatever. And as I could recall, it's probably been that way for 20 years, no?
At least as long as I've worked here, which is 13 years. So.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay, thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. With that, let me shut down my report and get Joe's up for him, and he can come and speak to you guys.
Thanks for that great report, Sean.
Joe, I just need to state your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Sure. Joe Hamilton, 604 South Shoreline Drive, Liberty Lake, Washington.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, it's all yours. You got 30 minutes.
All right. I have what?
30 minutes.
Oh, okay. I won't need that much time. Okay. Well, good evening to all of you on the planning committee and to all the residents who've shown up, taken an interest, at least 2 of you I know, in the topic. I'd like to start my presentation with an image of the current zoning in the area surrounding the property, which is the topic of the zone change. And I guess, can I see this on here, Sean? There we go. This is a bit of an expanded view. I know Sean already showed a similar slide, but this does give you an expanded view. So this is the subject property here in the yellow. And then, so further north, this is what shows a little bit further than what Sean's did. The sort of 5th Street facing portion of the land between 4th, which is here, and 5th Street has what I would estimate as a majority of C-17 currently. So see, what I'm referring to is, can you see that up there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this portion right here is C-17, this one little portion, this entire portion. I'm not sure what the blue is, but this is residential. Then this is the subject property this evening. And then, of course, to the south, as Sean mentioned, is already C-17. Sean, how do I go to the next slide? Just click, okay. I thought I would spend a couple of minutes updating you on the progress we have made on the garden since you approved the special use permit in November 2015. Engineering the hoop house to the city standards took the better part of a year, but we're now making good progress and likely have the most sturdy hoop house in the entire country that can withstand 100-mile-an-hour winds and I think 5 feet of snow maybe. So, but at any rate, we have a wonderful hoop house because of it. This will actually be our first growing season. It's taken a while to get everything done, but we have completed construction on our 36 by 60 foot hoop house. In which we are transplanting a whole lot of stuff right now. In fact, we just pulled the tarp over it, Sean's picture. I didn't even put an updated picture, but we pulled the tarp over it today and began even transplanting today. So it's very exciting. We're in the process right now of transplanting 170 tomatoes, 200 peppers, a variety of chilies, And for now, our row crops, we've begun with 400 heads of lettuce, 50 feet of spinach, 25 beets, 25 feet of radish, 25 feet of kale, and 25 feet of arugula. So if any of you are vegetarians or salad lovers, you should love that. Not only has this special use permit helped us create more jobs, but we are specifically designing the foods we grow to minimize competing with other local suppliers of ours and in the neighborhood, or I should say in the city. On the educational community outreach front, we expect to be ready with our curriculum for school field trips by next fall. I may not have shared this vision with you last time, but we hope to design very educational and interactive field trips for a variety of school-age students. We plan on beginning the field trips with a presentation in our education center that I did talk about last time, followed by research activities in the produce department, and then with hands-on portion in the garden. The research portion is already complete. Since we created the educational wall art a couple of years ago. This is an example of one of them, but we have 5 of these in the store, and these are designed to be used as a part of the field trip curriculum. And basically, we chose the plight of the bumblebee and the colony collapse issues that perhaps you're familiar with as a means to illustrate the value of environmental stewardship. The garden portion will address gardening skills, of course, but also environmental biology topics like organic and inorganic and living elements inside healthy soil composition. I think this is good for you to see the results of what you've already approved, but also to persuade you to recommend to the City Council that the 4 lots in question tonight would serve the community well if they were to have their zone changed to C17. The special use permit allowed for the residential lot to be used for gardening and educational group assembly. But since then, I've expanded, I've envisioned a sublime natural outdoor dining experience for customers of Pilgrim's Market. Wouldn't it be great to be able to meet your family and friends for a juice or salad bar and to dine in the garden where much of that food was made? Years ago on a trip to Napa Valley, I had the pleasure of grabbing a warm loaf of French bread, some gourmet cheese, and wine inside a winery, and was able to enjoy an amazing picnic there amidst the vineyard with friends. It's a memory that stuck with me for over 20 years. And I want this zone change to allow for many similar memories for residents and visitors to our beautiful city. In my opinion, this zone change is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, at least the portions that I grabbed from the last ones. Sean hit a few others that I overlooked. But from the others, I definitely feel that this plan, and just so you know what you're looking at here, this is obviously a rendering of our plan for what we hope the area to look like. And I'll answer your questions and explain that in just a moment. But I do believe it's consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, as it would preserve and enhance the beauty of Coeur d'Alene. It would certainly promote opportunities for economic growth, and it would also most certainly preserve the qualities that make Coeur d'Alene a great place to live. The garden is already shaping up as a beautiful addition to the neighborhood and will only grow in beauty in the years to come as the edible and aesthetic plantings grow and mature. We've already created some beautiful artwork from an old dying tree and plan for more art as well as a serene water feature and other green space. From myself and the 90 employees at Pilgrims and future Market Garden employees, thank you for your consideration. This was this morning, actually, this photo. So if you'd like me to walk you through this real briefly. So on the bottom right of this, well, here, before I get there, this little portion at the very bottom is the existing Pilgrim's Market building bordering 4th Street. So my plan would be to build an opening out the back of the store into a greenhouse that would provide for year-round dining amidst the garden. In the summer months, there would be, garage door type openings to give access to the garden itself, primarily designated picnic areas. We're sort of envisioning this area right here as a picnic area. This would be some green space with some orchard trees as well as ornamental things. This is the existing hoop house that you saw in the prior photographs. This here would maybe be a water feature with another little picnic area, and then row crops, some more, another sculpture over here we're envisioning, and some other row crops over here. And we currently have a storage shed here, and another one over here that would probably remain. So I guess that's it for my formal
Any
presentation.
questions of Joe?
Any questions?
No? Thank you.
No questions? Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've got a few people signed up. You can see Young Bennett. It's checked favor but did not wish to speak or not speak. We're good?
I wish not to speak.
Okay. Is in favor. Then Michelle Bennett, also in favor. Okay. Then Steve Casey didn't indicate whether they wanted to speak in favor or not in favor.
Just listening.
You okay? All right. Then we have Rick McLannan. Rick, did you want to speak on this, or you just signed up by?
No, I'm sure I just filled out the wrong paperwork.
Okay. And the same thing with Stan. Okay. So that's it for any of the people that signed up. So Joe, you can. There's no rebuttal. So unless we have some questions of you, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this and bring it to the commissioners for someone to make a motion and go from there.
Mr. Chairman. Just a quick point, though. What John said, currently, part of this is Zone C17. So it's not the, it covers the whole area because there couldn't find any formal action on the bill, but it's not as severe. It's really just the 3 lots.
Well, actually, it's currently being used as C17. There's parking, and part of the store actually extends into there. It's not actually zoned that way, but it's been used that way for 20 years, so not to split hairs, but.
Okay. I mean, this seems like a very good plan.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on May 8th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of ZC-1-118, a request for a zone change from R17 to C17 zoning district. The applicant is Joseph D. Hamilton. The location is 6 existing parcels along the west side of 5th Street between East Walnut Avenue and East Spokane Avenue, half block. I would urge the adoption of the findings of the justification for the approval of B1 through B7, that we adopt those findings. That B8, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies, and I would cite Objective 1.12 community design, Objective 1.14 efficiency, Objective 2.01 business image and diversity, Objective 3.05 neighborhoods, Objective 4.01 city services, and Objective 4.06 public participation. Item B9, the public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. This is based on the staff report. Item B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time because the topography is essentially flat and there are no encroachments by stream, wetlands, or other items. Item B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhoods with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land use, and that's also per the staff report on traffic congestion. That 5th Street also would be another avenue for traffic to utilize, and that the zoning request is compatible with other C17 zoning uses, also per the staff report and the applicant testimony. So the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds the request of Joseph D. Hamilton for a zone change as described in the application should be approved. And there are no special considerations or special conditions, I believe, that have been asked for.
Okay, we've got a motion by Rumpler.
I'll second that motion.
I got a second by Fleming. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls? Ingalls?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Okay, item ZC-1-18 passes. Congratulations. Best of luck to you. All right. It concludes our public hearing portion of the meeting tonight. We're going to go into the comprehensive plan update, and Sean, you want to take that over and introduce the people who are going to be giving us a presentation, as well as, I believe we have some guests in the audience. So if you'd introduce all those folks, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I think a number of our guests have already signed in, so
Okay.
that's great. We do have a number of representatives here from the School District 271. Looks like NIC is represented. I wasn't sure if University of Idaho or Lewis and Clark is here. Okay. So moving on to the comprehensive plan update. So staff decided that it would make great sense to have some experts in their field come and speak to you tonight regarding growth, demographics, and economics. First up, we have Olivia Metz. Olivia Metz is an economist with over a decade of experience in helping communities thrive. She holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Michigan. Olivia is a founder of the Metz Group and works for MC, a labor analytics firm based in Moscow. Her insightful economic and demographic analysis guide decision makers in economic and commercial development, as well as transportation and environmental planning. Olivia has worked in both the public and private sectors. More recently, she served in the Idaho Department of Labor as the regional economist for the state's 5 most northern counties, the position that Sam is currently in, and Sam will be up next. Olivia was previously employed by the national consulting firm HDR Inc., where she worked out of their Washington, Chicago, and Alaska offices. Her projects ran the gamut from master planning urban centers to land use forecasting and transportation modeling. And with that, I will turn it over to Olivia so she can give her report.
Sorry to interrupt, but I was getting a few hand gestures, and Olivia and Sam were wondering if maybe we should have Sam go first because he provides more of the regional perspective, and then Olivia would drill it down for more Coeur d'Alene. That works?
Yes, so let me read Sam's and we'll get both of those out of the way and they can give their presentations. So let's see here, we'll have Sam go first. So Sam Wolkenhauer is the Idaho Department of Labor's economist for Northern Idaho, where he has served the public for 3 years. Sam provides expertise in data analytics and advanced statistical methods with clear and informative verbal and written communication. He provides value with his ability to perform advanced research and analysis, and then seamlessly transforms those findings into information that is understandable and usable for local stakeholders. Before joining labor, he earned degrees in mathematics and economics from Eastern Washington University. In his spare time, he enjoys studying East European history, watching the New England Patriots in German soccer, and doing math puzzles. He realizes that most people hate all of these things. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Sam.
Thanks. Good evening, Commissioners. As I was listening to that, I thought, I don't remember writing that, and then I realized that's my LinkedIn bio. So maybe I should go edit that. It's been a little while. So what I'm going to do for you tonight is essentially go over some important trends in regional economics, and then I believe Olivia is going to talk a lot more about some of the specific demographics of Coeur d'Alene. So we're going to get more granular as we move through the night, I think. And when Sean invited me to come give a little presentation for you, he said, just tell them whatever you think is important to know about economics. And I realized there's a huge gap between what's important to know and what people want to hear about at 6 p.m. So hopefully this will be nice and condensed, and I tend to focus mostly on colors and shapes because that's how I learn. So if we want to show you what the economy looks like in one picture, this is generally how we do it. This is the year-over-year change in employment across the country. So anytime we're above that red, it means our economy is growing and it's adding jobs. And then obviously you can see our deep recession here where we sink down and begin shedding millions of jobs year over year. So the economy's been growing for, it's been about 8 years now since we started climbing out of the recession. And it's really been quite a phenomenal streak of job growth. On the whole, we've been adding about 2 million jobs year over year for the last 6 or 7 years. And this is one of the longest unbroken streaks of job creation in the history of the country. So what this means is that we're very, very late in the business cycle. And this is something that's important to remember. This doesn't mean that we necessarily anticipate that a recession is imminent or even specifically likely to happen. The way what I liken this to is essentially like flipping through a deck of cards. And if you think of a recession as turning up an ace, the longer you go through the cards, the more probable it is that you will eventually find an ace, the longer you go without seeing one. Now, we don't necessarily know, oh, this is definitely it, but the longer we go through this business cycle, the more likely it is that something will disrupt it, because it's an organic process that we don't have any control over, no matter how much we like to pretend that we do. So this is the most important thing to understand right off the top, is that we're very deep into this business cycle. It's one of the longest business cycles that we've ever experienced. And so that risk has to weigh on our minds with how long the economy's been growing. And how consistently too. So let's talk about this. We'll go regionally and then narrow it down and talk about Kootenai County. What we've experienced in the last 5 years specifically has been very regionalized economic growth. And this economic growth has followed demographic patterns. And Olivia is going to be talking a lot about demographics, but what's essentially important to notice here is that there are 2 belts in the United States where the population is growing very quickly. And these belts are the Intermountain West, essentially running from Arizona up through the Pacific Northwest, and then the lower Atlantic seaboard. These are the highest growth areas in the country. And what's particularly notable about this is that the highest rates of growth have been in mid-sized metro areas. And so that's basically a double bingo for Coeur d'Alene, for Kootenai County. Very much fits the profile of the types of cities that are growing very quickly across our country. And so we anticipate that this will continue into the foreseeable future. Olivia is going to be talking about the forecasts for the demographics, but our internal forecast at the Department of Labor, we expect the population in Kootenai County to keep growing at a steady click of on the order of 2 to 3% annually, which is really quite phenomenal. Now, this has had pretty substantial effects on our labor market. So here I'm showing you the total employment in Kootenai County specifically. This is the lowest level of detail that our department produces employment data for, is on the county level. So this serves as our proxy for Coeur d'Alene's economic health. Now the red line is the level of total employment. So this is all jobs in Kootenai County. And what this blue line represents is what employment would have been if employment had simply grown at the same rate that the population grew. So if we kept producing jobs to create that same ratio of work to population. And so essentially the takeaway from this is that the gap has almost completely closed, and there's very little slack remaining in Kootenai County for continued job growth. And this again has to temper our expectations for the economic future. Just like we saw in how deep we are in the business cycle, we have to be aware that there's probably very little remaining slack for our local labor market to grow. So for Q1 of 2018, total employment in Kootenai County was about 74,500. And if we'd kept pace with population growth, we'd be at 76,500. So that little gap is very commensurate with the very low unemployment rate that we've been seeing here, which has been on the order of essentially 4% for the last year. It's a very low unemployment rate compared to the rest of the country and compared to the rates that we historically see here in Kootenai County. So when we're planning for the future, when we're thinking about what the near term might hold, we should temper our expectations for how quickly the economy can grow, simply because there's very little available labor remaining. And there's certainly very little available skilled labor remaining. Most workers with desirable and economically valuable skills have found reemployment by now. The other factor that we have to take into account is essentially, I would just label this the way human behavior changes over time. So what we've seen is this long-term decrease in what we call the labor force participation rate. So that's essentially the percentage of people that are working or seeking work. And so you can see that there was this long period of increase starting in the 50s and essentially running to the start of the 2000s. And that increase is associated with women entering the labor force in extremely large numbers. But this has begun to taper and to decrease in recent years. And so what I'm showing you here is that essentially all of this decrease, where it's tapered off here in recent years, this is essentially all attributable to 25 to 54-year-olds, which historically are the age group that are most likely to be working. That's your prime working years after you've completed your education, before retirement. So we've seen a decrease in labor force participation that's almost all due to the demographic that should be the most likely to be working. And so this represents a very important change in the behavior of Americans, not to put it too clinically, that has important implications for our economic future and for the future of our communities. So when we break this down, people often wonder about millennials because millennials tend to be waiting longer to find their first employment. And it's true that the percentage of young men and women not in the labor force has been increasing. So this is the labor force participation rate for 16 to 24-year-olds. And you can see that non-participation is increasing. So for example, in 1985, only about 28% of males in this age group were not in the labor force. Today that number is a little over 40%. But this change is mostly attributable to education, to young people being in education longer, being more deliberate about pursuing education, and they're also a little less likely to work while they're in college. So if we look at what I term idleness, and so by idleness we mean that someone is not working, not getting a degree, not taking care of a child at home. So when we talk about the rate of young people that are idle, there's no increase in this idleness. So when people talk about labor shortages and wondering where our workers are, the temptation is to think about millennials, but it's really not true that millennials are hiding from the labor force for no reason. They're mainly staying out of the labor force to pursue education and start families. In fact, essentially all of the decrease in our labor supply, our labor force participation rate, has been due to a drop in participation from men between the ages of 25 and 54 years old. So this is the labor force participation rate by gender. And the rate for males has decreased by 18% since 1950, and the participation rate for women has increased by 24%. And those numbers may not sound large, but nationally you're talking about 18% of roughly 130 million adult males that fit this category. So this really does represent tens of millions of people, and we observe similar phenomenon locally. So this is something that has confused people because this was not really anticipated that we would see this problem, that as the economy recovered, men, especially men in their prime working years, would not return to work at the rates we would have expected them to. And so this represents, in my opinion, probably the largest constraint on economic growth. If you're talking about the #1 barrier to future growth, it's almost certainly the question of how do we get men to go back to work at the rates that they previously were working, because this has taken on the order of 20 million people out of our national labor force.
Sam, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So does that signal a persisting cultural shift?
I think that it does. I think that there's a variety of factors that go into this. One is almost certainly that, unlike 60 years ago, you have a significant number of households that are single earner homes, but it is what we would call the female householder that is working. So that has had something to do with it, certainly. There's also certainly an association with rising rates of disability claims, prescription drug use. There was a study out of MIT a couple years ago that said that the #1 predictor of whether or not a prime age man was not working was whether he had a prescription for painkillers. That's not talking about any illegal behavior. Like a genuine prescription for painkillers was the #1 factor that would predict whether or not a man would be working or not. And so I think that it's a combination of that, disability and painkillers, and also that there are more women working and supporting their households.
Sam, one more question. Can
Yes.
you clarify what is included in labor force? Is that all skilled labor, unskilled labor? Is it self-employed, contract work?
You
Is
are
it
in,
everything
you're
where
in the labor force if you're working, and that would include self-employment,
Okay.
or if you're looking for work.
Okay.
And so that comes from a very large survey that the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out. And so it includes non-traditional work like driving for Uber. It just asks if you're working in gig economy, self-employed, et cetera,
Okay.
or looking for work. So in light of this, there is very little labor availability. This is a national phenomenon, and it's especially an Idaho and a North Idaho issue. The unemployment rate is low across the country. It's extremely low in Idaho. So nationally, almost all of the unemployed have returned to work. We get this nice U-shape. You have millions of layoffs, and all of those people have either gone back to work or dropped out of the labor force, so they're not looking for work at this point, which makes it very hard on employers, especially if you're trying to find someone with very specific skills. In fact, today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that for the first time that they'd been counting, there was a perfect 1-to-1 ratio of job openings and job seekers, which is very tricky to find work, especially if you need a specific skill set. There's also a dwindling supply of part-time workers who would be upgraded to full-time if they could. So we call these economic part-timers. So they're working part-time because they have to, but they'd prefer to be working full-time. Again, we derive this from surveys, and this number is dwindling substantially. So these statistics, because they're revealed to us by survey participants, it really shows us what American households are thinking about the labor market. And what they're telling us pretty consistently is that most people who are looking for a job have found one. And those who haven't found a job tend to be what we would call chronic or long-term unemployed, which suggests that they may have other limitations that are preventing them from finding a job. That's typically what you see in terms of people who are unemployed for many, many months, even many years. And that's essentially all that's out there for employers who are looking to hire. There's also this puzzle that we have, which is why wages aren't growing more quickly. So what I've done here is all these bars, these sort of shaded areas, are times when unemployment was below 6%. And so if you look at this, you see a spike typically in wage growth when unemployment's very low. That's just a reflection of supply and demand. Low unemployment, you have to raise your wages to compete, often to poach from your competitors. And it's curious that we haven't seen this spike in recent years. We'll just say that we actually don't know what's causing this. And people are, every month when the wage data comes out, economists are like, here must be the wage spike. And it's very incremental. It's not the spike in wage growth that we're used to seeing. So this may have something to do with why labor force participation is dropping. there's a clear relationship between wages and the willingness to work. So what you see in a lot of publications, like if you read Bloomberg, is you see the word sticky. They say that it's a sticky labor market and that wages are sticky. And this is a trick that economists use to make it sound like they know what's going on. So if we don't know why wages aren't rising, so I just tell you, well, the wages are sticky right now. And so that explains it. We see this locally. And I think this is my last slide, and it's a very colorful one. So these are the percentiles of wages in Kootenai County. 10th, 25th, the median is the 50th percentile, and then the high earners. And so what we've seen is that wages are rising at the higher percentiles. The highest percentiles have seen larger increases, both in dollar terms and in percentage terms, than the lower percentiles. Partially this reflects the fact that the shortage of labor is most acute in skilled professions. You think of programmers, medical professionals, those labor shortages are more substantial and more pressing than the shortage of skills for the service sector, for example. So we have higher earners in Kootenai County that have done quite well, and their incomes are rising substantially faster than the rate of inflation. But the median income in Kootenai County has essentially risen with the rate of inflation since the year 2001, which is when I start showing it to you here. So in more simple terms, it means that 50% that the 50th percentile and down in Kootenai County is earning about the same adjusted for inflation as they were in 2001. So this is obviously something that we need to keep an eye on because this is directly related to the well-being of our households. So here are some notes that you don't have to read. Basically that we're very long into our business cycle. We have to keep that into account. We have this problem with wages not rising as quickly as we want them to, and we might not fix that. We might not resolve that because it's entirely possible we'll have another recession before those issues clear. And again, I'm not telling you that we have any reason to think a recession is starting. We just have to be aware of how deep we are into this business cycle. I also want to highlight for you that Coeur d'Alene fits the profile of the types of cities that are growing very, very quickly. The Intermountain West is growing very, very quickly, and it's typically mid-sized metro areas that are doing the best. Big urban areas did better early in the recovery, but then as their cost of living soared out of control, the growth has shifted to mid-sized metro areas like ours. And finally, we want to be aware that the demographics of our workforce are changing, and so in the future, we're going to have a workforce that is more gender balanced, and it's older because people are pursuing education, working at lower rates, but they're also working longer into their lives. So retirement and workforce entry are going to happen later in life in the future. That's what we're seeing. And these happen for both good and bad reasons. It's good that people are healthy and can and want to work longer. But it's also bad that a lot of men are not healthy and as a result are not working. So there's pros and cons in this dynamic as well. So that's what I had for you. I hope that the emphasis on colors was refreshing for you because I hate numbers this late at night. So if you have any questions, I would love to field them.
Go ahead.
Sam, I'd just like to say on behalf of all of us up here, thank you for your presentation. And
you're welcome.
The context of this, of course, is we're on a comp plan update cycle, and I would encourage you to stay involved with us if we could tap you again as we go through this process.
Absolutely.
And so forth. And I appreciate your enabling me to learn a few new terms tonight. Sticky was good. And I always feel old when I tell people I'm retired, so I'm gonna say that I'm idle and I'm hiding from the workforce. Thank you very much.
I don't know if that's good, John, either being idle.
I'm hiding then.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter.
Sir.
The growth, is that attributable to jobs or people moving into areas because of job availability or because of quality of life, or do we know?
Well, that's a chicken and the egg issue because population drives employment, but there's also certainly the inverse effect as well. I would say that quality of life and cost of living has a lot to do with it. Olivia's going to talk specifically about who's moving here and why. I would say that it's definitely a blend of very high quality of life, manageable cost of living, and an economy that is growing. Because in a lot of the Rust Belt, there's no growth, and there hasn't been any substantive growth for years.
So that's not a sticky question then? Huh?
It's not a sticky question, no.
Thank
There's definitely a connection there. Any other questions?
Thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm like, am I driving? Hands off the wheel. Sam and I could go on and go round and round with our, we might need a beer after this and talk more about it. So I'm going to do a deeper dive into more of the local, what's going on locally, and touch on some of the developments and obviously get into the demographics of the area. Sam did a great job of kind of queuing me up on this. So I'm just going to dive right in to the concentration of the demographics currently in Kootenai County by age group. And as you can see, as anything above 1 is more heavily concentrated than other areas across the nation. So we are an older population. Median age is 40. In the state, it's 36. And as a country, it's 34. So just keeping that all in mind, demographics really really drive industry as well. So considering that it's an older population, it really drives the service-based industries. So healthcare, restaurants, and the like. And when talking about healthcare, the hospital has really good wage jobs, but then you get into more home healthcare type wages, and that's about $8 to $9 an hour type jobs. So you're kind of looking at a wide spectrum when you're talking about service-based industries. And it's not going to change too much as we look at this is the projected annual population growth by age group. So using a combination of Department of Labor, MZ, and my calculations, I did a more conservative estimate on job or population growth for the total population. But I want to really point out the fact that total population is growing faster than the working age population, and that's really important. So as you can see by age group, most of the growth is in the older populations. And obviously this is on past trends, and our trends have been looking like this for quite a while. So the 30 to 44 demographic is growing at a healthy rate, but as you can see, the 45 to 54 is projected to decline. So just some things to kind of point out there. And Sam talked about labor force participation rates, and that's really important to really keep in mind because Kootenai County tends to trend about 2 percentage points lower than the national average. So when we're talking about demographics, those are key indicators for when we're looking at job growth and how much potential we have as an economy. So I'm going to show you a lot of visuals as well I like visuals, especially maps. So this is change in total population from 2011 to 2016, and it's density. So as you can see, the green areas are more, have shown a lot more growth than the red areas. So it might be difficult to see, but I try to zoom in on Coeur d'Alene proper, and you could see around Best and over 15th, those were due to a lot of new developments over the past several years. And I did break this down for the school district of the 0 to 17-year-old population, which is an interesting map as well. So if you guys do want that, we could share that too for the comp plan. So just to kind of focus in on the Coeur d'Alene proper, where the growth is and has been over the last 5 years. Obviously, Post Falls and Hayden have also seen some growth. So I can't talk about demographics without talking about poverty and income. So this is income and inequality. It's the average wage of the top 20 percentile divided by the average wage of the bottom 20th percentile. And it's pretty on par with most areas, but not this large spike from 2014 to 2015. That is really drastic. And during that time, the average housing price in Kootenai County jumped from $288,000 to $321,000. And the housing price index increased 11% year over year. And that is really unheard of. We didn't see that. It was pre-recession. 2006 was the only other time that has happened. So although the poverty rate has been on the decline, it's not as high as the state level, but it's still pretty high. We do have a lot of poverty, and you could see where the heavily populated areas of poverty are in this map. So again, Coeur d'Alene proper, so this one is individuals with income, the income to poverty ratio less than 1. So the higher the density of area with individuals in poverty, the darker the shade it is. So, and per capita income is 20% below the national average in Kootenai County too. So now I'm going to dive into the developments that are going on currently in Coeur d'Alene. And I had the city help me with some of the data. So bear with me as I try to dive into some numbers here. So this is how building permits have looked from 1990 to 2016 currently in Kootenai County. As you can see, we're still not at the peak from 2005, but steadily on the rise. And these are total permits issued by the city of Coeur d'Alene. And you could see that there has been some dramatic increases in 2017. And right down here are, oops, don't look at that. That's the fun stuff. So single family, 2017, there were 293, and in 2018, and that was 69, and that was a couple months ago. So I'm sure these numbers have changed. And then lots platted. As you can see by area, the number of lots platted in 2017 are pretty significant. So these are where the developments are. And I wanted to show this because of the concentration of developments. And I think this is really helpful from a comp plan perspective to understand where these developments are and the heavily concentrations. So I did crunch some numbers on these are single family developments, and there are 781 total units that are planned. And with that, I used the average household size in Kootenai County at 2.6, and that's how I got to the estimated population of 2031 for those single-family units. So as you can see, the Ramsey area, and then south of 90, also near Ramsey. And these are the multifamily developments. You might have a harder time seeing these. But again, along Ramsey, there are 3 developments along Ramsey, and then in the core, I'd call the Coeur d'Alene core a little bit more downtown, there are an additional 4, 5, and that is a total of 335 units. And what I did on this, I didn't estimate the average household size at 2.6. I averaged it at 2 because these are, there's a lot of condos, and I was assuming, I was being conservative in those estimates. So those households will most likely be smaller than the single-family households. So that's how I derived at 670. So this is a breakdown, and you guys probably could get a copy of this. I asked several real estate experts in the area, kind of interviewed them on each of these developments and what the type of demographic they're expecting and what price. So this is a breakdown of that. So Alpine Point, there's 28 lots. It's the demographics are upper 30s and retirees. Median price or average price $425,000 to $500,000. So on and so forth. But there's a large list here to kind of give you an idea of what demographics are going to be looking like in these upcoming developments and at what price points. Again, going back to those average house prices and the price index, it's only increasing. And these are developments in Hayden and Dalton Gardens area. So the key takeaways are the total number of units. There's over 1,100 units that the City of Coeur d'Alene has building permits for, and with a total number of estimated population of 2,700 people. And most of that development is along and south of Ramsey, so around the Ramsey corridor. Older demographics in the area, and a lot of those developments I didn't stay on that slide, but a lot of them are retirees. So, and then the working age population is not growing as fast as total population, so that's really key. And are these housing prices really pushing out the working age population? I don't know, it's just more of a question than a fact. So that's really all I had. Did anybody have any questions?
Go ahead, John.
I'll just throw a thank you, by the way. That was great. You know, you think of the city as kind of a competitor, if you will. P&Z, we're a competitive company, and our competition, let's say, is Hayden and Rathdrum and Post Falls or in California and Seattle and everywhere else. And we got this comp plan that we're doing, and we're running out of land, if you haven't noticed, you know. So if there's different housing types, you know, we've got towers and condos, and we've got apartments, and we've got infill projects, and we've got kind of these little empty nester type pocket things that are popping up, like the Meadow Ranches of the world and those kind of things. And there's going to be a lot of market, I think, for those and infill. But we're running out of space, you know. So, you know, Coeur d'Alene is no longer going to grow in the suburbia area. So are we going to kind of miss the boat? What are we going to see a market for, most recognizing who wants to be here, who's moving here, and so forth, say these retirees and whatnot? There's certainly no difficulty in selling these suburban lots, but we're running out of that kind of development, you know. Is there going to be a big market, if you will, for folks, for infill projects, more condo towers, apartments, those kind of higher density things?
Absolutely. It's something that a lot of demographers, real estate professionals got wrong, was that the baby boomers, they thought they wanted to be in the suburbs. But they got it all wrong. Look at Kendall Yards. Their main target market were millennials, and who came? The retirees. So more and more we're seeing that the older population wants to be more in the core. They have the healthcare services. They're closer to the downtown area and to the different restaurants and the amenities. So it's the millennials that are actually wanting more of the suburban lifestyle now. So there's going to be that need for infill because of the demographics that we attract and the services that we have to offer, especially with Kootenai Health expanding as much as they are.
Could you even envision a commercial corridor along Government Way, for example, where you've got an abandoned Kmart and up north of Costco, there's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. Could you see some of that commercial corridor that's kind of fledgling because of amortization retail becoming infill in the future?
I think that's up to the cities and the planning departments. I mean, it's definitely opportunity. I mean, you see more of those projects. We see it locally. I've seen it in other states where those abandoned malls are becoming data centers. So there are different uses for these types of old retail spaces. And a lot of the demographic shift are wanting more of those niche markets. So more of those boutique type markets anyway. So I don't know that I answered your question because I think that's more up to planning.
I have a question but a comment first. I don't share Commissioner Ingles' view of the city. I believe the city has growth possibilities. I believe the city is very strong in providing sewer, water, et cetera, and I believe that our borders will expand. But when you were in your introduction, someplace I wrote down transportation expert. Are you a transportation expert?
I used to do transportation modeling for a consulting firm I used to work for.
It comes to my question is you see where this growth is, you see where Ramsey, and we had one commissioner saying, I know what I don't want to do is see what the traffic congestion is in town A over here because it's just destroyed and so forth. And it seems to me part of our comprehensive plan update needs to address transportation in some fashion, streets and whatnot.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so I don't know if I'm not inviting you to expand your scope, but I'm just saying that some of it, transportation is a very key issue.
It's very key. I mean, when you're looking at any of these developments, you have to be talking about transportation. The school district needs to be talking about transportation for their schools. Everybody needs to be talking about transportation. KMPO has they've been doing some great modeling for some time and really utilizing and leveraging. They have access to Department of Labor data that not many people do have, and they're able to model from that. So I would really leverage KMPO.
So we don't do modeling necessarily, we just do land use and zoning in some fashion.
But using their modeling.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, I guess a question or maybe a concern I have is with the demographic patterns and is being able to, or what implications or what forecasts does that have on attracting industry and talent and retaining industry and talent for, keeping that job growth and job opportunities going. We have college corridor and how do we anticipate if being able to be competitive and attracting companies to attract talent, to attract more of a working population and a tax base to support the growth?
Just by working with Jobs Plus and other economic development companies and corporations around the country, that education's number one. That's going to be the number one attractor. And I think that if you continue the growth of the education corridor and the other happenings with the school district, the jobs will end up, they'll be more in a more appealing place for the workforce. Because the employers are, when they come here, they're looking for
Right.
those opportunities for their workers too, and especially if they're relocating. But you're right in terms of our demographics don't really show or shine that working age population. I mean, it's still growing. It's just not at the rate that the other population is growing. So it just kind of falls in the shades of, it's overshadowed by the older demographic.
Mr. Chair, do you want to go?
No, go.
So I think I've mentioned this on a number of occasions prior to your appearance, that Coeur d'Alene is unique because it's a resort community. It's a city on a lake. And because of the very fundamental nature of a resort community, you get that disparity in kind of the age of the kind of an older population. It's pretty well borne out by the statistics both Sam and you have shared. I guess in my mind, this is kind of, I think, a fundamental question about kind of this is the identity apparently does drive a lot of the larger macroeconomic factors in the community, and my sense is that it's just a reflection of who we are. I mean, that's just the fundamental nature of the kind of community we have been and we currently are. How we invest in maybe making some changes in that regard as it relates to attracting new industry or new workforce or all those other components that, again, competing with other communities to try and diversify our economy away from that resort, essentially the service base supporting a large wealth base based on the nature of our community. I think that is really an interesting challenge, and I think I'll continue to reflect on this as we kind of talk about the comprehensive plan and what kinds of things we can do to enable that, perhaps some incremental evolution, in who we are and where we want to go. But it does seem to me that it's really hard to get away from what you are and have been, kind of to make a significant shift. Could be very challenging.
Right, and large growth in healthcare is mainly because of the demographics. But then you have manufacturing that is probably one of the most diversified manufacturing sector that I've seen. And that creates stability. So there's something to be said for that too.
Now, I just want to add, this is very interesting with the numbers, because we sit here and we get a lot of requests for annexations and subdivisions, and we had one a couple of weeks last month. A number of lots got approved, and one of the issues were the schools, and where all these kids going to go to schools. And today there was a good article in the paper that the school district is looking at land, but it's a long process. I think we have a challenge here in Coeur d'Alene to manage not so much our growth, but how do we manage the land that we have available to us, and what do we do? Because as builders and developers in this area that own land and want to annex other pieces in, we have to be smart about what we do as far as the population is coming in. It's very interesting. There's a lot of older people living here and coming here who are retired or idle from other areas, and they come here because it is less expensive to live. It's perhaps a better environment, and I see that in my business in construction, that there are a lot of people coming here that are 65 and older and living longer. People are just, I mean, it's a national phenomenon. Everybody's living to 70 and 80, and healthcare is very important. So we have a great healthcare base here, which is drawing people, as you say, but that's increasing our population. And I'm amazed of what much building is going on and who's buying these homes here. So we have a challenge to say, all right, what do we do in our small little community that we're kind of in a box? on how do we manage all our growth without just going high and higher and higher. And so I think these numbers are very interesting, and I appreciate what you just said to us.
I do want to say that it is national. I mean, everybody, and international. I mean, it's happening all across the country. I think up here it's happening a little bit, well, it's happening at a faster rate, for one, but for two, a little bit more heavily concentrated. And the demographic of this, like Sam alluded to, the single female household has been increasing substantially as well. So those are some things to keep in mind as you move forward with infill projects and maybe affordable housing and the like.
Mm-hmm. So, right. Any other questions?
Well, affordable housing, can you define what affordable housing is?
What's HUD's definition of affordable housing?
Or is that a sticky question?
So there's different schools of thought, and affordable housing versus workforce housing versus just something somebody could afford. I don't know.
I bring that up for a
yeah.
very specific reason, because when we talk about that, we need to have it defined. When we talk about absent definition, we'll have 7, 8 different views of what affordable housing is, or workforce housing and so forth.
Yep, absolutely. I think there's different levels, personally.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to shift gears here a little bit. I would like to thank both Sam and Olivia for showing up tonight, providing their expertise. They are obviously at the top of the ladder for what they do, and we really truly appreciate their talents and their time and sharing that with us. So thank you so much. Not sure if you guys want to hang around for the next portion of it. You can leave if you want. All right, so the next portion that we were going to go into is Nicole and myself are going to talk about the public involvement and community survey. But before we do that, we wanted to mention that the schools, or at least representatives of the schools, are here, and I had reached out to them and sent them an email asking when they would like to do something similar to this and come and provide kind of what's currently on their plates and what they see for the future. And in that email, I put out a couple of dates out there, which is May 22nd, either at noon or 5:30. Noon's a little bit tough just because of the number of schools that we'd be inviting, unless you guys are willing to stay for longer than a lunch hour. But that time is available, or at 5:30 at a normally scheduled hearing. It would be like our second hearing if we had overflow. The other times that I had provided for were June 12th, either at noon or at our regularly scheduled hearing. But next month is going to be very, very busy, and so that 5:30 time slot will not work at this point. So they have said that they are available for any one of those times.
What was the dates in May again?
May 22nd, which is a Tuesday. It would be 12 noon or at 5:30. Or we could do June 12th at noon.
I have a problem with the second meeting. I mean, for me, it's up to everyone else.
5:30 sure.
You good?
Do 5:30.
I'm retired.
I'm not idle.
You're idle.
I'm not idle.
John's idle.
I'm hiding.
You're hiding. Good.
5:30 on 22nd.
I'm be leaving for a work trip that evening.
You got a workshop that evening, okay.
Work trip.
So noon would be preferable, or not at all?
Noon would work, but that's tough for
On the
everyone else, I
22nd?
understand. Uh-huh.
What?
It would work for me.
Well, you two, anything will work.
June 22nd? Is that what
May
we have?
Go ahead, no,
If you
May.
wanted to approach it, it'll sound better.
Yeah, come on up.
And we thank the commission for the opportunity. My name is Stan Olson. I am the 45-day superintendent of the school district, with the superintendent-elect coming into the district as of the 11th of June. There may be some advantage to having both of us here. when we present and be part of not only a presentation, but the discussion with this august body and certainly members of the audience. That would certainly be your prerogative. But as I suggested when you were suggesting dates, that I thought about that a bit more on the way over here tonight, and there may be some advantage if it's in the interest of this board to have the exiting interim superintendent, one of the late demographics here, and the entering superintendent to be part of that presentation, part of that discussion, and part of the relationship building with this group.
That would be in June sometime?
Again, Dr. Cook, who will be the incoming superintendent, will be here as of the 11th of June. He takes office officially on July 1, but we have convinced him that it would be in everyone's best interest to have him early in his orientation period and relationship building period. So there might be some advantage, again, if that fits the agenda of this group and the prerogatives of this group.
Sean, so what were you thinking dates in June then, if we were going to do something?
June 12th is what he had said, so it'd be the day after Dr. Cook
I'm sorry.
arrives. June 12th.
June 12th?
That would be a noon meeting because that night will be pretty busy. You guys will be on task for much of the day.
Okay.
Could we do the following
No,
week?
good.
We could, but it would be
Would stand.
if the schools are available too.
Yeah.
So these are times,
Schools out.
I reached out and sent the email prior to all these items coming in. I was trying to get ahead of the curve and it bit me.
Durance Day.
What day would you both be available?
The 12th.
The 12th.
That would be a June 12th, 12 o'clock meeting.
Noon.
Yes.
Good?
High
Good.
noon.
You're in? You're in? You're in?
do
Those
it.
two are in? We're in. June 12th.
All right, June 12th at noon, and I'll send out emails to everybody and let them know. That buys me a little bit of time for preparation, thank you. All right. So with that, I'd like to move on to staff's presentation here. All right. So, we had a meeting with Coeur d'Alene 2030, and we decided that in the best interests of both groups to hopefully join forces for efficiency, we want, as we move forward and revamp our plans, for both of them to remain relevant and to prevent redundancy between them. We want them to end up working together. Coeur d'Alene 2030 has done a great job at visioning and laying out some of the steps that the city needs to take and has been adopted by council. And we wanted to increase that bond and as we move forward. So we discussed the timing of this, and our comp plan was completed in 2007 and updated, or actually adopted in 2008. And 2030, obviously it's in the name, would normally expire or try to reach its end result by 2030. A normal comp plan lasts about 20 years, so it would be 2027. So we were thinking, hey, let's do this together. We were looking for examples of other communities that have done something similar, and they're not easy to find, but the closest one that I could find is Denver. And so Denver has their comprehensive plan, and then they also have what's known as Blueprint Denver. And those two documents work together, and we're not near the scale of Denver at, 3.4 million people in the greater Denver area, but we were thinking that doing something like that would behoove our community and prevent redundancy. So to kick that off, we were thinking of doing some phases. And those three phases are marketing and messaging in phase 1, phase 2 would be data collection, and phase 3 would be public engagement. And Nicole Kaler, who's the executive director for Coeur d'Alene 2030, is here to talk a little bit about those phases for us. And if she would like to, she can also talk about where the Coeur d'Alene 2030 plan intersects with the comp plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Nicole Kaler, the project manager for CDA 2030. Sean mentioned that we are at a point where we are going back out to the community and revisiting whether our vision and implementation plan are relevant. We're also looking at trying to prioritize the actions in our plan. Currently, we have 180 actions. The first phase that we are looking at going through is the marketing and messaging phase, really the communications plan. What is a visioning plan and what is the comprehensive plan, and why is it important? Those are two really important key steps that we need to take with this upcoming process. We need to share what a timeline for this process would be and indicate opportunities for the community to get involved. We would utilize different forms of media to reach out to different demographics, including but not limited to print, social media, and digital media. We have an option coming up this summer to launch or really share a save the date with the community at our annual celebration event in August. Last year, we had approximately 500 people show up to the event, so we feel like it could be a great celebrating what has been accomplished, but also kind of looking to the future of what's going to happen in the community and engaging those community members. Phase 2 would be data collection, and this would be more scientific data collection, creating community profiles with demographic information, statistics, and projections about our community. We also have the option to do a scientific survey. CDA 2030 conducted 2 scientific surveys in 2013 and 2014. They are very expensive, but we found it useful in that we were able to compare the non-scientific data that we gathered with the scientific data and really validate what we had collected from the broader community. Phase 3 would be public engagement, and really based on our process that we started in 2013, we would likely have stakeholder interviews, online surveys through platforms like SurveyMonkey, hold focus groups, conduct workshops, not only to the broader public, but in schools. Last time we had 4 in high schools, and then hold open houses. We also are currently considering an online discussion and engagement forum like Thought Exchange. Right now, our committee is really looking at the barriers in our communities to why people cannot attend these events or choose not to, some of them including childcare and transportation, and really looking at how we can design public engagement opportunities that allow people to really get more involved in the comprehensive plan and vision validation. As Sean mentioned, we have a number of actions currently in our implementation plan. Here's 17, they're on 2 slides, that are related to the comprehensive plan. Specifically, the comprehensive plan vision integration is an action in our plan that we hope to achieve by having this partnership. So I'll give you just a quick second to look at those. And then here are the last. The focus areas before were in growth and development. This is community and identity, as well as health and safety. So funding, currently my board has approved to dedicate $20,000 to this vision validation process. They also are very interested in partnering with the city. Recently, we have also received $3,000 from the National Association of Realtors and the Coeur d'Alene Association of Realtors to support marketing. So again, back to phase 1, we're looking at really educating the public about why this is important and why they should get involved. As Sean had mentioned, we feel like this is a great opportunity to cost share. It's also a great opportunity or a real opportunity to not burn out our community. We want to make sure that we're not asking similar questions in parallel. We want to partner and make sure that we're efficient. And then also, we don't want to confuse the general public about what the two processes are. So really kind of make sure that we are sharing the same message and engaging the public at the same time. So I think, Sean, are you going to come back and talk about next steps? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Nicole just handled the lion's share of what was going to be presented for this. I just really need to say that, you know, we have these young members of our community that are stepping up and really doing some wonderful things in our community. And as the older guy here, I feel these young kids are nipping at my heels, so it's time to step up my game. So thanks again to the folks that came and presented tonight. And with that, that pretty much wraps it up. If you guys had any questions or wanted any further discussion, we can open that up, or that can be the end of the meeting. So, thank you.
Questions, statements, anything?
Thank you.
That is very good.
Rick, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything at this time. You wanted to come up and address. You've been here patiently, and I know you, you good? Come on.
Put him on the spot.
I happened to be at the NIC Booster Lunch today, and
Oh, you were? Good. Thank you for that.
yeah,
Heard there was a good turnout for that.
yeah, we did.
So we were invited to come and listen tonight, and NIC has been in a very structured planning process of our own for the last probably 14 months or so, resulting in a number of integrated plans around facilities, master planning, academic planning, and kind of the big planning blocks that we look going out for the next 3 to 5 years. So happy to come and share that work with you. I would suspect that there's some interest around, certainly around workforce development and program aligning and things like that, given some of the subjects that I heard you talking about this evening, but I certainly don't want to waste the Commission's time. If there's something specifically that you'd like NIC to address, we're certainly prepared to do that. But any way you'd like us to engage, we're here for you.
Okay, well, I'm a big supporter. I was on the other comprehensive plan update, and we weren't at this level of what we're doing right now, even having these discussions. And I'm all for getting more community involvement from everyone, because I think the comprehensive plan isn't just for the city, it's for everyone that lives in the city, and whether it's the schools or businesses or anything like that. So I certainly welcome, and I think most of these commissioners agree that the more involvement and the more meetings that we have and the more input we have from all organizations is important.
Well, I applaud that, and I just add that Dr. Olson and I have begun really working in that spirit in terms of aligning the district's planning with college planning, and I won't be here for is it the 12th? But we will be here to hear
Great.
that presentation so that we can make sure we stay in the conversation. So,
I appreciate that.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if nothing else, I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to
Second.
adjourn. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thank
And
you.
good evening.
So-